Well, we can bring in Joseph Lappin now. He's partner and head of employment at the UK law firm Stewarts. Morning to you, Joseph. It's difficult, isn't it, to underestimate the import of this as legal precedent?
Yes, well, it's a very disappointing decision for Uber, but I think most lawyers and legal commentators expected the Supreme Court to find that Uber drivers are workers and therefore are entitled to um, national minimum wage and also holiday pay. It's a disappointing decision for Uber, but it also has wider repercussions for the gig economy.
Yeah, we'll come on to that in a minute. But just from the legal perspective, Uber said these people are contractors. What were the markings of their employment relationship with Uber that all of these judges in the different levels of courts have said, no, actually, that does not look like a contractor relationship to me. That looks like one of some kind of employment.
Yeah, that's right. So Uber has lost at every stage of this long-running saga. So first of all, lost in 2016 in the employment tribunal. In summary, what the courts have found is that there is no contractual relationship between the Uber drivers and their passengers, but there is a contractual relationship between the drivers and Uber. And Uber has control over the way in which the Uber drivers operate. Uber's case has always been that it merely plays the role of an agent, and that there is no contractual relationship between the drivers and Uber itself. And the courts at every stage of the process have said that that is simply not the case.
Well, in California, Uber managed to see off a similar challenge, didn't they? But just talk us through in Britain, really, what happens now? Some 60,000 drivers. My understanding is this now goes back to the original employment tribunal, and the judge there determines what the drivers are entitled to.
Yeah, that's right. So we've now reached the end of the line in terms of Uber's appeal process. The Supreme Court has said that Uber drivers, or the Uber drivers in this particular case, are workers. They are therefore entitled to all rights that workers are entitled to, which includes the national minimum wage and holiday pay. So this will now go back to the employment tribunal, and the employment tribunal judge will now calculate what sums are owing to the claimants in this case, but those principles will then be applied across the board to all Uber drivers. So you can quickly see how this is going to become quite expensive for Uber.
And Joseph, just in the last minute, we've had a statement from the app Drivers and Couriers Union. I could just read you out a little bit of what that says. The United Kingdom Supreme Court today handed an emphatic victory to Uber drivers in their 6-year battle for worker rights, including the right to earn the minimum wage and holiday pay. The court handed down a unanimous decision from the 6 judges who heard the case, and there was no dissenting opinion. This is a landmark decision that will fundamentally reorder the gig economy in Britain. And that's the main point, isn't it? You've been touching on it. Roland Manthorpe was touching on it as well. It's big, the gig economy, and this is going to fundamentally shake up that business model, isn't it, if workers are entitled to additional rights, additional pay, and so on.
Probably, yes. I mean, every worker status case, employment status case, turns on its own facts. And so I am sure that we will see gig economy workers come to the courts and the tribunals with additional claims along the lines of those pursued by the Uber drivers. But each case will turn on its facts. And so employers in the gig economy will put forward reasons as to why their business model is different to Uber's and why the individuals working for them are genuinely self-employed and not workers or employees. But yes, this is going to have ramifications for the gig economy generally. And employers and businesses working in the gig economy will now need to be looking very carefully at how they engage their staff, and progressive employers in the gig economy, I'm sure, will now be taking steps to make sure that they do pay the national minimum wage and that they do offer holiday pay to their staff so that they don't end up in the same position as Uber finds itself in today.
Yeah, I guess business is also going to be brisk for the likes of you and the employment law industry. Could we also see some of these employers decide that they just can't afford it and they're just going to rationalise staff? And what are the legal ramifications of that?
Yeah, I mean, well, COVID and the COVID-19 pandemic has been a good news story for some businesses operating in the gig economy. We're all very familiar now with the excellent service provided by workers working for companies like Deliveroo. But this will have ramifications for gig economy employers. I mean, if you look at Uber, they've had a run of bad luck recently. You touched on the case in California. That was one good news story for them, but they had an unhelpful result in France. Uber drivers in France are employees. We all know about the troubles that Uber has been facing with transport for London. Uber's costs and the costs of companies operating in the gig economy are likely to increase as a result of this judgment. What will happen next? I'm sure we'll see costs passed on to consumers, but there will be some organisations working in the gig economy who may find that it becomes far too expensive to continue operating if they do have to pay staff holiday pay and the national minimum wage.
I don't know whether the two Uber drivers who have gone all the way from tribunal up to Supreme Court, will they be entitled to get their legal fees paid?
That's a good question. In short, no. In terms of the process through the employment tribunal, I don't think that they will suffer any consequences in the court. In the court system, it's a bit different to the tribunal, so the loser will pay. There may be some sort of agreement reached between the unions in this case and Uber, because I don't think the individual drivers would have paid their own legal costs in this case. It would have been the unions who were representing the Uber drivers.
OK, all right, but a landmark day for workers in that gig economy. We are hoping to hear from those claimants outside the Supreme Court very shortly, and we'll take you to it as and when they appear. But Joseph Lappin, thank you.